Now, I am very excited about speaking to a game designer because I've never spoken to a game designer before. Now I have. So I'm going to
Cool.
be learning all about not just your game, but where do you start with something like when you're building Life in Reterra? Where do you start? What is the very first seed where you go, actually, I've got an idea for a game? I know you've done games before, but we'll focus on
Sure.
this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is I'd love to give you a simple answer, but game design is, as you would guess, very, very complicated. Um, there's nothing linear about the creative process, especially not for game design. So I couldn't like point you to the exact moment where I was like, oh my God, life in Reterra, right? So this really is the culmination of, I would say, like a 10-year plus ambition to do something. I've always wanted to do something like the most epic possible experience that a broad audience would could understand and could be compelled by, right? I'm well known for these big box lifestyle games with like collectible card games and expansions and stuff like that, and I still love that. I love those games that are bigger than the box that have meta game and have all that. But it's been my very, very strong opinion for a long time that this kind of experience is not necessarily limited to a hardcore audience. We can do something like that. We can offer that breadth and depth of experience for a much wider audience. Mostly based on the fact that like some of the most popular video games of all time right now are Minecraft, Fortnite, Roblox, and those things go as deep as you can possibly get. They're lifestyle platforms almost at this point, as opposed to games. So that was the seed, right? The seed was the ambition to do something like that. Um, the where the kernel of Reterra came from, like I always have like a million game design ideas in my head, and I have a lot of I have a lot of collaborators that I love working with, and so the my collaborator Ken Gruel, who's the co-designer of Reterra, and we were banding about like we were getting ready to do another game. We want to do something really, really big, and often we trade ideas. Like we'll show like here's an unfinished idea, or here's a game that I think I could use your help on. And with Reterra, it's like I sort of scared Ken with the like, all right, I want to do a game like that only like the biggest publisher in the world could do, or that might be impossible to publish. That such crams a huge amount of experience, a huge amount of value into one box, and has infinite expansions. But because Ken is a mass market designer, and he knows the mass very well, something that the audience that you usually design for will be able to get into. That's where we started. And that was like 3 years ago, I think, when we got really serious about it.
Okay. And is there, and it was going to be one of my questions, is game design the initial part of it? Is it pretty much a solo endeavor until you get to a certain point, or is it collaborative straight from the beginning?
It depends. So I've done about an equal amount of game designs by myself and game designs with collaborators, and every single collaboration is different, even with the same collaborator. Because I'm allergic to rote and process. So like I don't want to ever start with a design going like, oh, I've kind of done this before, or I've been through these steps before, or I know how to solve these problems. So what gets me excited is like, oh, here's something I haven't done before. Here's an ambition I haven't tackled before. Or more importantly, here's something that I wish was on my shelf but isn't.
Okay, I noticed it is on your shelf as well, so the audio people won't see
Oh, it
that,
is now. Thanks,
but it's up
Hasbro.
there. But it is up
Yeah.
there. I was watching a video where someone was reviewing the game this morning, and they were going through everything, and then I was reading some interviews that you've given, and their videos made the game sound more complicated than it seems to be. So maybe that was just their reviewing style or whatever. But I have read that Life in Reterra is quite an easy game to pick up. So you don't have to be an expert in a certain type of game. How easy is it for somebody who's maybe not played games for quite a few years? I mean, I think the last games I played were Trivial Pursuit or
Sure.
Monopoly or Scrabble. And there are a lot of games out there where it's like, that looks really interesting, but how easy is it for me to pick up?
Sure. Well, so look, I will answer you by example rather than just words, right? Because everybody will say that, oh, my game is simple or my game's accessible. So I will teach you the game over camera without any components. So in Life in Reterra is a lot like those. Remember those mobile games or Facebook games you may have played, where you're building a little community or building a city or a farm or something like that. Like sort of that vibe, right? Where you are building you're building competitively, you're building a sustainable community out of little tiles, one by one turn at a time. You'll grab a tile from the center and you'll match it to other tiles that have different land types. What you're trying to do is you're trying to score by four ways: by getting inhabitants, by getting buildings, by getting places, big chunks of land together, and by relics. And some combination of those is going to get you your final score. You'll finally build a 4x4 square of community. So like one tile at a time. I'll pick a tile, you'll pick a tile, next player will pick a tile, and you'll attach it to community one at a time. And then here's the twist that the twist is that there are little shiny gears on all those tiles where you'll get to put inhabitants or buildings and there's 5 buildings in every game. So in each game, there's 5 buildings that have different ways of scoring and different powers. And so if you can get enough gears in the same land together, you can put a big building on it and score in that way. Game's over when all players have 16 tiles. Whoever has the highest score wins. That's the basic. Now, of course, it goes way deeper than that because there's like 10,000 combinations of buildings and each of the building types. But in each game, there's only 5 buildings out because we want to make sure that it doesn't have too much cognitive load. You can look at it and go, here's my strategy. I'll try to find some combos in between them or just build buildings that I like. And that's it.
At what point did the 10,000 different permutations come into it? Is that something that comes pretty early on? Because I mean, we look at a classic game like Monopoly or Scrabble, it's effectively the same game each time you play it. Sometimes one person might win, sometimes somebody else might win, but they are, they're classics for a reason, but they are the same sort of game. But with Life in Reterra, it's with 10,000 different outcomes. This sounds like it has a lot of repeatability, and it's something that you constantly will play. And is it a game where you get better? You will learn the best ways to win. Something like chess, for example, where you go, I've played it a lot, now I know how to be better at the game.
Yes. So actually, those are 2 different questions. I'll answer your first one first. So how, like, yes, the 10,000 combinations, it was very early. So my past, I designed collectible card games for 10 years. So like, I'm no stranger to like what we call in pretentious designer speak, combinatorial replayability, right? So every time, like if I build a deck with just a slightly different set of cards, I'll have a very different outcome and different feel for the game that we're playing. Almost all games have variants, right? Like different ways that different outcomes for each game. But like you mentioned Monopoly in your example, like the variance in Monopoly comes from like the wildly erratic dice rolls or the different order that people will buy properties on, or like you'll get variety in that particular way. But the vibe of the game will be about the same every time, right? And that's a comfortable feeling for folks who just want that, right? So what Reterra offers is a different kind of variety. It's something that we're used to in hobby games, which is which I call vibe variety, right? So that like the game itself has a slightly different feel depending on which parts of the game that you're playing with, and you don't play with the whole game you don't play with all the components every single game, right? So Reterra has 30 different buildings. You will play with 5 of them, and even changing one building will change the vibe, right? And so that's how we get that. So that is not super uncommon in hobby games, but it is very uncommon for broad market games. So the whole point of this game was to introduce that level of variety to a much broader audience. I think. Sorry.
Oh no, carry on.
No, please.
Oh, I think it's really, and I will be asking at some point, how the landscape of board games has changed over the past few years. And I'm sure it has with the digital screens and mobile phone and stuff like that. But I think it's really nice that Life in Retro seems to have like a really long lifespan. So it isn't a game that you play a handful of times and you go, okay, I've done it now, I've mastered it. It is a game that you would bring out when your friends come around. It's 2 to 6 players or 2 to 4?
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
It could theoretically play more, but we wanted, like, when we put something, a player count on the box, we want to make sure that it's the maximum amount of fun for every player count on the box. And we found the sweet spot is 2 to 4.
I also think it's nice that it has that lower number of two, because so often people don't have, 6 people or 8 people or however many people in
Right.
their house that go, let's all play a board game. Usually you
That's
can
right.
find 2 people. So I think it's really nice that it does go down to that number.
Right. Well, I play a lot of games with my wife, so it's very important for me to have a good couples repertoire of games.
Who's the better game player?
I mean, I'm gonna say me, but
Yeah.
but my wife is smarter than me, but I understand games better. So, and like that experience tends to help a little bit. And of course, I care more about winning. She's just there to have fun and play with two
Yeah.
knobs and see how the game works.
So you're the competitive one. Okay.
I
You're
can't
like,
help it.
I need to win. Yeah.
Can't help it. Once you push the button, that's it.
And I mean, going back, is it correct that you originally thought I want to be a rock star, but then you somehow transitioned through the world of D&D and then became a game designer? What happened to the rock star part of you? Is that still in there, do you think?
It's always going to be there. Yeah. So I was actually going to be. I so I became a musician around age 9 when I was exposed to Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. So I wanted to be a heavy metal rhythm or lead guitarist. I couldn't figure out which, but I was in several bands and we did lots and lots of gigs, and I love songwriting. I think in music, and so that's never left. I still do that, but I don't do it commercially. I just do that for fun for myself. I gave up on the. I did not like the music industry at all, and I didn't. The types of decisions I'd have to make it creatively, I don't think would have worked for me, right?
Yeah.
With games, games are naturally commercial because they're like unlike other mediums. With games, the designers, we're giving you a tool set to entertain your friends with. So your participation in the game is very important. So that way, like that, I found it a lot easier to participate in sort of a more compromising art field and still feel like a lot of artistic integrity. And
Yeah.
so to me, I was like, wow, cool. I get to make a very, very commercial styles of games and not ever feel like I'm selling out or feel like, oh, if I'm reaching a broader audience, I'm actually succeeding because that's what we want to do. We want to spread fun and joy across as many players as possible. To be clear, I've been playing games since I was 6 years old. I just didn't think I was going to be a game designer until I played D&D back in the late 90s or late
Yeah.
80s, sorry.
And I think, I mean, you mentioned Rockstar. I think if you're a Rockstar, you might be signed up with like EMI or whoever. As a game
Right.
designer, life in Reterra is Hasbro. That's the equivalent. I think you're a game designing Rockstar because it doesn't really get much more big brand iconic than Hasbro. So what's that like working with them?
I mean, dream come true, right? So Hasbro's been a bucket list for me forever. I worked with Wizards of the Coast, who's owned by Hasbro for several years. I worked on mainly on their Duel Masters card game, and I even did a little bit of work on Magic. Um, but Hasbro, like, I mean, yeah, Hasbro is they're the
Yeah.
end game, right? Like they have
Yeah.
the thing I love about Hasbro is like as big as they are, they have this. Not only do they have this gigantic reach, but they have this engendered trust that most big mainstream publishers don't. Right? People like most people in the broad mass market, they don't really know about brands that much. They don't care that much. But generally speaking, if they see a Hasbro logo, they'll generally go, "Oh, okay, this is going to be at least something fun."
Yeah.
And that's wild for the great yes, and we have that in hobby, but no way in mass. So I felt like leveraging that brand loyalty and earning players trust for slightly more complicated games, like a game that invites you to like follow us down the rabbit hole and to see how deep these kind of games can go. Hasbro is perfect for that, and they're amazing to work with. Like
Yeah.
you would think, a giant publisher with there'd be a lot of faceless people in there. Like I have found, at least from my experience, the team we worked with for 2 years was incredibly passionate. They were really dedicated. The Reterra is a new IP for Hasbro, which is and you could tell how much passion everybody poured into it and how much of themselves they poured into it. And we'd have these like Thursday stand-up meetings with the team, and everybody was so excited. They couldn't wait for that meeting, and me neither. I loved working. I absolutely love working with them. So hopefully, I mean, that sounds kind of PR-ish, but it's true. Like
Yeah.
I absolutely love working with them.
It's
And
like
like we'll be doing
it's like
more.
I don't want to sound like I'm kissing the behind of Hasbro, but it's like from a person who goes out and buys things, if I see a Hasbro name on it, I go, okay, I know what level of quality I'm going to get from whatever it is I'm about to buy. So it does have
Right.
that iconic brand awareness, and you go, I hadn't heard of your game until I'd heard of it. I saw the
Right.
Hasbro name on it. I'm like, oh, what's that? Let me investigate that further. So you
Yeah,
know,
they've earned that pedigree.
yeah. Now
And by the
I
way,
oh
sorry, I'm going to kiss Hasbro butt even a little more because I've been working so closely with them. They've just recently. I encourage all of your listeners, because I know you guys are a lot of like hardcore gamers that play these big games. But some of these games that you grew up on, that I grew up on, Hungry Hungry Hippo, Perfection, like they're doing new editions of these games that are like have these huge lifestyle upgrades that are just better engineering. Like they are better engineering, better packaging, same price. That's coming out recently. That basically looks like it was made by nerds who are fell in love with this stuff and want to make an upgrade to these games to make them as fun as you remember from your childhood. Like, because
yeah,
most childhood games you go back to and you're like, oh, this wasn't as fun as I thought.
yeah.
Some of these classics are getting a facelift to get the physicality out of the way, or to embrace the physicality of it and just be better. And so that's the main reason I was excited. Like they were so product focused and so user focused in the last few years that I'm like that. I mean, I'm all about that, right? All I care about is how much fun the player's having.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of watching movies and TV shows and stuff, but I'm
Mhm.
not necessarily just the older I get, but I think the more I carry on, I want to step away from the screen. I want to just switch the screen off. I want to put something on a table and be social. Obviously, not, you can watch a film and it could be kind of social, but there is nothing more social than two or four people or however many people sitting around a table with some snacks, some drinks. They're away from the screens. They're not looking down at a mobile phone, and they're just playing a physical game, moving pieces, reading cards. And
And
I'm
playing
very
and
happy
interacting
that,
with each other, right?
yeah, yeah. And I think that's more important, certainly, after the crazy pandemic, where I think a lot of people isolated themselves. Everybody watched, streaming platforms constantly. I would rather spend like a Sunday afternoon going, right, clear the table, get the board games out, and just play a bunch of sessions of a game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like there was my colleague at Hasbro, Tanya Thompson, was just talking about this recently, that they did a very detailed study about the loneliness epidemic that's really come to a peak in the last few years. The pandemic certainly didn't help, but the increased dependence on solitary entertainment,
Yeah,
right, is I mean that's a thing. And look, I'm not going to knock it. I love I love single player video games. I love watching movies. I'm never gonna not like that. But I agree that the we are at a I feel like we're at an inflection point right now where we need to be getting out and being more social again, or remembering like
yeah,
how much fun it is to interact with people at a table.
yeah. Because I found that during the pandemic, I was working from home and stuff like that, but you kind of forget how to interact with strangers. You
Yep,
go, and it's not that you don't
yep,
like them. You just go, I'm okay not interacting, and to sort of get yourself back into interacting with them
that's
is a
right.
little bit tricky sometimes. I need to
Right.
force myself to be social.
And
But
well,
once you're
that's
back in, it's great. It's amazing.
not to evangelize, but well, yeah, to evangelize. Like games are really good for that, right? They are the ultimate social lubricant, right?
Yeah,
Like here's a set of rules that we all agree to abide by. Like that they're on the surface, they're out there, so we don't have to worry about like these unwritten pleasantries and so like we're already friends. Let's have this like nice ordered interaction, and then that can who knows where that can go. But I love that games can do that. Like they're absolutely healing for that.
and also I was reading about your game, and a single session is around half an hour ish. Is that
Yeah, 30,
correct?
30 minutes. I would say like it could go up to 45 minutes for four players with high AP, sorry, a high analysis paralysis, like who love to agonize over every decision. But
Yeah,
it's quick. I have a have a dreadfully short attention span. So I like to have games that pack a lot of punch and don't overstay their welcome.
I think that's why I've not played Monopoly for a few years, because it's like Monopoly could be one of these 8-hour games, can't it? Really, and you're like, I don't know, that's my whole day off gone.
Well, the funny thing is about Monopoly, like I spent a lot of time in preparation. I might be answering a future question of yours here. In preparation for working on like more mass market games, I went back to my roots, went away from hobby games for a while, spent a lot of time playing games that I grew up with, even the ones I didn't like. There are a lot of really bad German mass market games that I grew up with, which is made me be a game designer in the first place.
Okay.
But I played them with people who love them, and it was really important for me to see like how. Let's use Monopoly as an example. Like it's not my favorite game, but I now play the game so often with people who love it. And everybody plays it a little differently, but the length is part of it. It's like it's because it's very open and very breezy, and it's not super demanding or intense. So you can spend a lot of, that magic circle kind of lets you be little mini capitalists to each other for like, for a few hours at a time. Exit the magic circle, go back to being go back to being people. But yeah, it's I've gotten a real appreciation for, or relearned a real appreciation for the classic games that like maybe we may not play, but I've kind of tried to get away from the like, oh, only modern games are good and classic games are bad. Like I feel like there's an audience for everybody. But I do feel like Reterra might hit a new one. Like I haven't seen that cross section yet of like broad market players who probably grew up on Monopoly, Trivial Pursuit, Scrabble, Perfection, now getting introduced sort of through video games, right? Through their video game background into like a big lifestyle experience.
What was the trickiest thing? Was there something that stands out, the trickiest thing designing Reterra?
Absolutely. So Reterra is it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? So like every decision in there. So the game looks like it was really easy design, and that's how you know it was really hard to design, right? Because the like I said, there's 30 buildings in the game, right? Ken and I designed 250 buildings, like easily, like we're both very experienced at this. But what we spent so much time not only deciding which buildings to keep, but while doing that, developing a rubric for ourselves and an identity for the game. It's like, why are we keeping certain buildings and not other buildings, right? And so every building that had to face a number of tests, right? It had to be intuitive, it had to be like had to kind of do what you sort of felt like it did, or it had to be hooky, or it had to introduce a key vibe change into the game. It had to be dramatic when you see it for the first time. It has to be easy to parse. So when you look at it, you can't read the text and go, I don't understand what this does, right? And they have to be subtle. They also have to have some cool back-end complexity and some great synergy and counter synergy with other buildings. So winnowing that list down, like there's a ton of buildings that can come out for Reterra, and we are working on future stuff as well. But the final list of approved buildings for Reterra, like the actual design space for Reterra is much, much smaller than it appears. There's a lot of buildings on the cutting room floor that look like, oh my God, why didn't you put that in? We played it. It doesn't hit every single one of those pillars.
And are they buildings that will probably show up in another project at some point, or do you go that this building was made for this, particular game? It doesn't work. It's gone. Next game, right. I'll do something else. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. To me, ideas are the easy part. Like I generate like components like for fun. Sometimes I'll design magic cards or Hearthstone cards, or just to keep my chops up, right? Like a designer, yeah. like a musician does rudiments on their or scales on the guitar, right? I'll just do that for fun, but most of them just don't stay, right? But there's got to be. It's not enough for something just to work. It's got to be magic. It has to be a perfect fit.
And you've got, at the time we're having this conversation, it's 42 days till the game hits retail. What goes through your head now are the things, because you're obviously very detail focused and you've got a rapid moving brain, which I guess helps in game design. Are you
blessing and a curse?
Yeah, exactly. Are you there going, oh, maybe I could have done this, maybe I could have done that, or are you go, no, it's done, I'm okay, I'm now thinking about the next project?
Both simultaneously.
Both simultaneously.
Both simultaneously. Yep. So look, there's not a single game I've ever done where I've not looked back and went, oh my God, I could have done that differently, right? And even like it's never like I'm always proud in the fact that I feel like they're all like most of the games, the vast majority of games that I published, I feel like I'm proud of them, right? I like they did what they were supposed to do. They're tight and focused, and even the sharp edges that are still left in the design, they're intentional, right? So, but every once in a while I'll be like, oh, what if I'd made a different choice, right? What if I made it like or altered the vision just a little bit? Or maybe this game wasn't as much of a match for its audience as I thought it was going to be. But in that case, or in some cases, I've changed as a designer. Like there are some games of mine that I'm very famous for that I could not design today because I'm not that designer anymore. Um, so, but I find that to be easy. That actually makes the like, nope, stop, move on, is easier because I feel like once the game is out on the market, it's not really mine anymore, right? It belongs to the
No.
fans.
Yeah. It belong, the Hasbro are like, we'll have that, we'll put it out into the world, and then around the globe. I mean, how, as a game designer, it's got to be pretty cool knowing that people all around the world are playing something that you and Ken created.
Oh, it's mind blowing. Like I've been doing this for 25 years. It never gets tired, and it never gets less. Like I don't know how to, I don't even know how to articulate it. It never gets less like,
Yeah.
right, like
Yeah.
I'm this year I'm doing a lot of conventions, specifically because I want to see these. I want to spend some time in the wild with these games. So I'm actually taking a bit of a break from game design this year. I'm not working on a lot of new stuff. I'm spending a lot of time playing my published stuff in the wild with players and really getting to, as you say, like enjoy that, right? Be around
Yeah.
players, like catch that energy. Um, and it's a great reminder of like why we do this, right? Like, of course, the money is great. Of course, you do that. Like making a living off of this is great, but I didn't get into game design for the money. Got into game design to add a bespoke level of joy to the world that I felt like only I could do. Um, and I feel like that's a level of hubris that you kind of need.
So if you went,
Um,
I'm guessing if you went back to the 8-year-old you and went, oh, by the way, one day you'll be doing a game and Hasbro re-releasing it, your brain would just. I guess it maybe still is doing this, but
I'd be like, yeah, you're full of it.
yeah.
No, there's no way.
And where's the game available from? Is there a
It's a great
specific or
question.
just
It
everywhere
is.
maybe?
So you can get it at pulse.com, which is Hasbro's online site. I know in France and Germany, it is available, and I'm sorry, I don't know how widely. So ironically, as a game designer, I'm actually one of the last people to know when and where my games are coming out from. Sometimes my fans have to tell me when a game is out. For example, I just learned that one of my biggest games from Exploding Kittens just came out, was released at Target like last week. So I'm like, oh, I guess I can talk about it now.
Yep.
So, unfortunately, it's something I can't answer you in great detail, but I know you can get it at Target.com. I know you can get it at Pulse, and it will be more widely available as the year goes on. I just can't give you any dates, unfortunately, because I don't know them.
But thankfully, we have an internet where people can go search for it. And I'll put the show note, the links to Pulse
Use
and
that
Target.
rectangle.
Exactly, but don't use it for too long because it takes you away from your board gaming. And a final question: how has board gaming, do you think, changed? I mean, we've covered a little bit with the whole loneliness aspect of it, but as a game designer, has the landscape changed a lot over the past few years?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's always changed. I wouldn't be doing this for 25 years if it wasn't always a constancy of change. I think today we are probably at the we're probably at the greatest embarrassment of riches, I think, that we've ever had. There are so many excellent games coming out. And honestly, the challenge now is not just to like I feel like collectively as a design as a discipline, game designers have gotten really good at making games that work, right? Like I feel I don't think I don't remember the last time I bought a game on the shelf and said, "Oh, this is actually broken. It doesn't work." Like we did in the
Mm.
70s and 80s, right? When like half of the games that were published were garbage. They didn't.
Yeah.
But so now I feel like our challenge is like standing out, right? Standing out. Like, why does this game deserve to be on the shelf? Like, there's 50 other games that are just like this.
Yeah.
And like uh, that's tough. And it's right now I'm finding that the biggest challenge that leads some designers like myself to a lot of self-censorship, right? Because I'm like, well, this game, I have a neat idea, but that reminds me of this game already on my shelf, and that game exists, so I don't care that much.
Mm.
I feel like we're entering an era. I'll make a prediction for you. I feel like we're entering an era where we're finally getting away from the sort of data-driven herd mentality thing where we're just following trends and copying like whatever games came out and starting to do more personal games. Like we're like only this designer could have made this game because they're making a personal statement, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a game here. I heart manatees. That game is about how much I love manatees. Like and I think it's going to be a commercial success. But I made it to teach my nieces about how fun, like about these awesome creatures I grew up with in Florida, and to make a little conservation game about that. There was no commercial consideration whatsoever, except that it was a game that was very close to me, and it turns out that yeah, there's an audience that agrees. I feel
I,
like I feel like slash hope that we're kind of circling back to that like
yeah.
very passion driven personal thing, especially now with AI, right? And the depersonalization of creativity, right? And like everybody's afraid of it, right? True or not, but I feel like the human connection is going to be a pivot. It's going to play a pivotal role in what kind of art gets, even in games, what kind of art gets broadly accepted and not.
I like that prediction. Yeah. I hope you're right. I really do. Hope you're right.
I mean, me too. I'm a professional in
Yep.
the field, right?
So you'd mentioned that you're going to do a few appearances. Which ones can you name that you're going to be?
Yeah,
So people can, if they're there, they can go say hi and tell how cool
absolutely.
you are and stuff.
I'll be at Gen Con in like next week, I think. Jesus, yeah, next week. That would be like August 1st through 4th, I think. I'll be at various booths. Most of my time will be at Hasbro. I have a few other games that I'm doing signings for. I think I'll be at Game Right, and Modifius and Exploding Kittens as well. I have 6 games coming out this year. It's wild. Um,
Wow.
I'm going to Essen, which is a game convention in Germany, the biggest one in the world. I think Gen Con is bigger. Um, but I'll be there doing the same thing, exactly the same. I'm going to a lot of regional cons. I'm going to
Yeah.
Grand Con, Gamehole in Michigan, Gamehole Con in Wisconsin, Breakout Con right here in my home city of Toronto, and oh, and of course, PAX Unplugged,
Hmm.
which is Penny Arcade's big convention, amazing convention at the end of the year, December. I hope I'm not forgetting anything, but I probably am.
That is a list and a half. So nobody could accuse you of just sitting around doing not a lot this year, can they? Because do you find time to sleep? It sounds like you don't.
Yeah, I actually do. Believe it or not, this is a travel heavy year, yes, but it's actually a fairly work light year. I'm working on like 20 game ideas at once, which most don't survive. Don't worry, I'm not making 20 games a year. I'm not insane. But like I'm usually working on a boat ton of games at the same time. I decided to scale back a little bit this year and just sort of just like I'm always working on stuff, but I'm less concerned with output this year and more concerned with
Yeah.
just living in the moment and appreciating what's already out.
Mixing with the audience, to
Yeah,
talk and play your games.
right, which I've always done, but this year I'm
Yeah.
focusing on that. Like I just go be a fan again.
Exactly. I think it's important never to lose that fandom thing.
Oh my God, you have no
Don't ever
idea.
lose it. No.
Hard agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean it's hard. This business will like look. Like I said I've been doing this for 25 years. I will never have that pure, unadulterated, childlike love of games that I did before I was doing this professionally. I'll never get
Mhm.
that back. But I still love the hobby, right?
Yeah.
I still enjoy playing games. I still enjoy interaction. But yeah, it's a discipline. Like at the end of the day, when I'm working on games, the last thing I want to do is go to a game store and play games.
Yeah.
But if I force myself to do it, it's amazing.
You love it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
once we're there, it's like going to the doctor. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm wishing you all the very best, not only with the traveling around and visiting with the audiences, but also with the launch of the game in September. I'm very, I don't have, you know, it's
You
the
know
first
more
time.
than me.
This is the first, yeah, it's 4th of September, 2024. That's why I mentioned the 42 days before. I mean, that may not be all territories, but that was the information that I got before. So you've only a handful of days until the game is out there. So
Amazing. The funny thing is, I feel like the game's been around for a while because it's been released slowly in territory. So I'm
yeah,
not sure. I mean, I'll be there for launch parties, of course.
yeah.
But I actually try actively not to sit around waiting for a release date and just more try to be out there, just be out there and excited.
Yeah. Otherwise, you sit there being nervous all the time. It's like 3 days.
Yeah, that comes naturally, so that doesn't need any help.
Yeah. Well, I would very much like to thank you for taking the time out to have a conversation with me. I've learned a lot. Let's say you're the first game designer I've ever spoke to, so it was interesting for me
Hopefully
to.
not your last.
Hopefully not my last. But it's been interesting for me to delve into the process of how you create games, what the world of gaming's like. So it was.
I
I
think you'll
enjoyed
enjoy this. Because
definitely.
every game designer is totally different. You can ask them the exact same questions, they'll give you very different answers. It's one
Yeah.
of the things I love about this profession.
And what have you got planned for the rest of your day? Because obviously it's early in the morning where you are in Toronto.
Well, today I'm about to sit down. I'm about to make some notes on a game that I'm turning over to possibly Hasbro
Nice.
later on today.
Fantastic. Well, I wish you all the very best with that. And
Thanks, Stuart.
enjoy your day, Eric.
You too. Take care.
Take care. Bye.